So, welcome back to a new week on Out of the Ball podcast. How are we all doing? I'm genuinely excited about this year. There's so many amazing guests lined up to share with you on the podcast. It's so exciting to know that I've got a whole year lined up with a waiting list of women that have got incredible stories to share with you and such an array of conversations. So it's going to be a really good, fun bumper pack year. And thank you so much for everyone that is subscribing and listening to the podcast. I'm being able to reach more women now. And, last week it was number 27 in the Portugal podcast charts. I ended the year last year in the UK charts in the top 30. So the more women I can reach with these stories, then the more we can create a ripple effect and we can encourage women to step out of their comfort zones. Because as so many of these women show on the podcast, you never know where something is going to lead to. And today is definitely one of those guests. Stephanie O Dell she's the founder and creator of Celebrate the Grey, and that's grey with an A, not an E. And she is a force to be reckoned with. She has decided that because she couldn't see what she wanted to be, she created her own model agency. So she now looks after grey-haired models, influencers, ambassadors, brand ambassadors, and runs focus groups with brands all around the subject of encouraging brands and fashion industry to include women over 50 into the conversation, which because we are still having to knock on doors and bang those drums. And I love the fact that she had no knowledge of the model industry before this. She was a stylist. So yes, she might have been behind the scenes, but she certainly didn't have the tools to set up a model industry and didn't let that her stop her. She started with writing a blog and then it developed into something much bigger, and she's really making waves over in the States, and I love the fact that she's so passionate about it. So whatever you're doing, grab a coffee, sit back and enjoy. So I'm going to say good morning to you, Stephanie, even though it's 5 o'clock in the evening here. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's lovely to connect with you, and it's yet another social media contact. I love all these connections that we can make across the pond. So whereabouts are you?
I'm in California, so the Bay Area, just about 20 miles north of San Francisco.
Oh, gorgeous. Yeah. What's
Lots
the
of
weather
rain.
like? Oh, well, we're not
Well,
alone.
torrential rain, which we're not used to. And unfortunately, we've been in a drought for so long that it's really wreaking havoc on a lot of hillsides and trees falling, and the ground just can't absorb all the water that's coming, which is, they said that we may be headed out of the drought, which we haven't heard in probably 8+ years. So that
Wow.
would be a miracle.
Yeah. Well, I live in Yorkshire in the north of England, and it rains a lot. It's beautiful, but we're quite used to the rain.
We were just there. I was there with my daughter in August when it was so hot.
Oh,
So
yes. Yeah.
quite the other extreme. We walked through Hyde Park and Regent Park, and the grass was all brown. I realized you probably don't have watering in the parks.
Yeah. No, we don't normally need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was interesting.
Well, we have got so much to talk about. I said in your introduction that, we are very much on a very similar mission, and we have got a lot in common. And so it's kind of knowing where to start. But the first question I ask all my guests to get some kind of idea about the person I'm interviewing, if you could choose 3 words to describe yourself, what would they be and why?
Patient, fulfilled, and aware.
Oh, I've not had those 3 words. That's lovely to have something different. And I like the aware. When you say aware, what made you think of that word?
Well, I realized as I'm doing this work in Celebrate the Gray that everything I've done in my past has really made me aware of the unincluded and the people that are kind of sit on the sidelines accepting what society serves them. And I look at my kids too, and I realize how aware they are also in the way that they approach and notice. So it's something I pride myself on, is being aware. And I do it everywhere and anywhere I go. I'm always like, oh, look at that person isn't engaged. Maybe we should go sit and talk to him. My kids, I drive them crazy when I'm out because I talk to everybody and anybody. And they're kind of to the point where, like, can we just go to the market and talk to people? But I just find you find out such interesting things about people. And the other side of it is you really may give that person a lift in their day that they needed. And it also lifts me up. I mean, I started Celebrate the Gray as a blog, and that was my point, was to talk to 100 women in the beginning. And I just met these incredible women.
Yeah.
that I wanted to see those women in advertising and marketing and not what we're currently served.
Yeah, and it's creating that ripple effect. And before
Yeah.
we get kind of really dig deep into Celebrate the Grey, where did the inspiration come from it? Because you were a stylist before, weren't you, working in the fashion industry? So you were already behind the scenes involved.
Yeah, I just kept hearing that messaging from people. I can't wear that. I'm too old. And then my older clients started saying, I can't wear that because I'm too old, or the fashion industry's forgotten me and I feel invisible. And then I noticed people starting to dress almost to become invisible because they didn't see themselves represented. So it was just kind of a theory in my head, like, what if we saw ourselves represented? Would that change the thinking of what was possible around aging? So did a small photo shoot around it, and I started a blog first and just met these incredible women. I had this great friend that said to me, when you have an idea and it's overwhelming because the possibility of the idea, it's like it's too grand or too great for me in the beginning, I was like, who am I to think I could do any of this?
Yeah.
So I stopped myself and was kind of like, just, don't even try. But a friend said, just start a blog and just talk to people and see what the reality is. So that theory kind of became more and more cemented. And I met these incredible women that I thought to myself, I want to see these women in advertising. And then did a small photo shoot with 6 of the women I interviewed. And then I saw the theory in practice. And I'm sure you have felt this being a model. We did the hair and the styling, and I did the hair and makeup, and then more modern styling, that they saw themselves differently.
Yeah.
And they started to give themselves permission to wear color, to be sexy, to think about, and that's a catalyst for change. Clothes can be a catalyst for change internally and motivate you to think about what's possible.
Absolutely. It's that saying, isn't it, that you can't be
Can't
what you
be what
can't
you don't
see.
see. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really believe in that. And I think it can create the ripple effect and make massive changes in women's lives, can't it?
Yeah.
And it's
It's
interesting that
just,
you said at the beginning as well about how you almost stopped yourself from doing it because you didn't know where to start. And I think lots of women will be able to resonate with it. I know I did it. And I think it's a case if you've just got to make a start, you've got to put
yeah,
a mark in the sand. It doesn't have to be perfect, does it? Just
right.
start.
Right. And so many people said to me, well, how are you going to make money? And what is it you're wanting to do? And I didn't know. And, I was fortunate. I was in the situation, I didn't have to make money immediately, where I know a lot of women are in the situation they need to make money immediately, but there's ways to be creative. You can do a side on the side. And I think the patience is one of my words, because I was always kind of a person that moved very fast through life and didn't have patience to say, okay, it's not working out right now, but what have I built right now, and what are the things I've done so far versus the things I haven't done so far. So that really taught me to focus on what I've done, what's a logical next step, not what's the end game, what's the next logical step that I could do. And sometimes the answers come to you because the universe is, to me, I believe the universe is trying to tell us things, and we don't take the time to listen to what's being served to us, or we don't feel worthy of being at that position. So sometimes you have to gain that. For me, I had to gain the experience and credibility to be able to vocalize what I was trying to build. And that's okay. I had a lot of friends that said, just go for it, do it. I'm like, that I can't do that. I have to actually do it. I can't just say, this is what I want to do. I have to actually do it.
Yeah.
And then, so now I'm to the point of, after almost 6 years of credibility, having a strong voice and knowing what I want to try to achieve.
And have you always had that strong voice, or has that grown as well whilst you've been doing this?
I think it's come with age. For me, it came from raising kids, doing a lot of volunteer work. I started styling as a volunteer at a nonprofit, and that led to styling at Athleta. It led for styling at an online styling site. It was a gradual thing for me, and that's just who, as a person, how I need to work. I'm not one of those that says, I'm going to do it I'm going to do it tomorrow. It's always in my head. I'm always working on it, but I'm chipping away at it. And that's just the way I've done it. Now that I have the confidence, I'm taking greater steps and greater risk, but I had to get myself there in my own way.
Yeah, you've been through a process and now look at what
Yeah.
you've created. So Celebrate the Grey, tell us about that, because you now represent models, influencers, really championing and supporting women over 50.
Yeah, that is who we are. We are Celebrate the Grey started as a gray modeling agency. Women started reaching out to me because I got some local press and some national press about the small photo shoot that we did. And I didn't really know what I was creating in the beginning. And that's kind of when I circle back to, don't worry about what the end game looks like. If right now you're just, in fact, in the very beginning, I put an ad on Craigslist, which is our local kind of, I don't know if you have Craigslist in the UK, but it's
No.
where you can sell things and buy things and find connections. And I put an ad looking for gray models. And some of my models are still some of those women that reached out to me from that. And asking for advice, I asked every gray model I could find and asked, what is the industry like? I knew nothing about the industry. And so started very small, and I thought it was going to be local in the Bay Area. I joined the Chamber of Commerce and I joined a bunch of networking groups, and then pandemic hit, and that pivoted things drastically because all of a sudden I didn't have any opportunities locally and everyone had time on their hands. So I spent the 2 years really connecting and building community, building diversity in the brand with race and size and age. We start at 50, anyone 50 and above. And there's not really 50 and above. Gray or going gray was my starting point, and not a proponent of facial plastic surgery. So that was my starting point. And from there, then we've grown to include influencers. And that was because women were reaching out that weren't gray. I'm going gray slowly. People say, well, when are you going to go gray? And I'm like, I am going gray. That's not my gray. Celebrate the Gray is the gray of aging.
Yes.
If we can turn all the gray of aging into a celebration of our wisdom and experience versus this demise, would we age differently?
Yeah. And it really does drive me mad. I'm 52 now. I didn't start modelling until I was 46. I've been grey since I was 13. And, I ditched the dye when I was 45. And it was, for me personally, it was liberating. I found it really empowering. But society still has such a negative approach to women with grey hair compared to men that are silver foxes. It's so infuriating, isn't it?
Yeah. But I think, seeing visuals like you have on your screen and all the work that you've done, and seeing all the women out there, a lot of the women that are part of Celebrate the Gray that are showing, Michelle, Great Days Ahead is one of our models, and she has this beautiful long gray hair. And, one of the things we're told, when you age, you have to cut your hair. You can't have long hair because you look like a witch, or you look, it just ages you. It draws your face down, all of the above. But back to, you can't be what you don't see. When you see her, she's my inspiration for my hair. I love long hair. I'm an athlete. I'm a runner. So I want to pull my hair back. And I'm not going to cut my hair. Yeah. And I've had people say, oh, you got to cut your hair, or I've got to cut my hair. I'm like, why? Where's the law, the rule that says you have to cut your hair? So that is so powerful for women to see. And also for younger, and I'm sure you've been on shoots, and younger people to say, oh, I didn't realize this is what 50s look like. How modern you are and vibrant, and all the work you're doing, and how you reinvented yourself and became a model later in life. Then those younger people start to look at aging differently. So they will age differently. It's this very powerful intergenerational opportunity we have to educate younger people about the power of aging and not the demise of aging.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. And I think it's really important that we have those intergenerational conversations, because we do need to pass it down the line. And I remember my mum had super long hair when she was 50 and got it all cut short because she was told from a very young age that it was aging and she needed to get it cut, and she didn't want to be mutton dressed as lamb, is a very British saying about older women. And I remember now, and if I'd have known what I know now, I would have stopped her and I would have said, listen, you didn't have to do that. But so I do think generations are learning, aren't we? Our generation compared to my mother's has definitely improved and understanding things better.
Yes. Although my inspiration, you asked the question about my inspiration for things. Part of my inspiration was my now almost 92-year-old mother, that when my dad's health started to fail, she said, well, I guess that's the last of traveling. That's the last for me. And I went, what, why? Well, and that was the generational, you do what your husband can do. And she changed that for herself. She traveled. She still tries to travel. She's part of groups. So I think that, again, and part of that inspiration came, I interviewed a woman that was 96. She was part of a rock and roll band at her community that she lived in. And she, was super interesting. And I did an interview with her, and my mom said to me, oh my God, she's so inspiring. So it's never too late to be inspired and think about taking back your power. And I saw that in her dressing too. It went from neutral tones to kind of disappearing colors to injecting color into her wardrobe.
I love hearing stories like that.
Chartreuse jacket and this butterfly skirt. And I just thought, oh my God, it can happen at any age. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. I love hearing stories like that. It's so uplifting and reassuring, isn't it, for what's to come next. But when you started this, you said yourself although you'd worked behind the scenes of the fashion industry, you hadn't worked in the model industry. So what kind of response did you get when you were trying to team up with other model agencies at first? Because at first, didn't you go down that route of trying to connect with them and see how they would approach it? What was their response?
Their response was, we've got our older models and it's not really a demographic brands are interested in. So I thought, wow, I have money. My kids are almost out of college. I'm going to have more money. I buy for myself. I buy for them. I buy for my partner. I buy for my parents. I'm a loyal customer. Yeah. Unlike my daughter, who's 22, who buys not as much as she used to, because we have a lot of conversation about it, but buys whoever she's following or whoever the influencer of the moment is. So I thought, that's short-sighted. Why would, and I had a good friend that was in marketing, and I had a conversation about it. She goes, well, we want the lifetime of a customer. So we want to get a customer when they're 25 and have them. I said, but we're living longer and healthier now. So if you got me in my 50s, you could have me for 40 years potentially. So it's short-sighted in that effect. And also, we are a very vocal, 50 plus women are very vocal, loyal, and want to support brands that understand who we are. Yeah. So, and then I did the number crunching behind, and it's huge numbers behind the spending power of the 50 plus women.
Exactly. That's the most infuriating thing for me as a consumer point of view. I think there's a longevity report in the UK that by 2040, we're going to be the biggest consumers of fashion and shoes, more than young people for over 50s. So to ignore such a large demographic when they get their spending power is huge seems so short-sighted and really narrow-minded. I don't really understand how we can make them change.
Well, I think our dollars speak loudly, and those brands that are doing it well, I always say to people, let them know that you notice. A lot of times brands don't get any feedback. So they think, oh, she's not really there. Or the dollars, they also have expectations sales are going to increase dramatically from one campaign. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but it takes more than one campaign and one picture in a catalog. We're a very smart consumer, and we can see through, oh, it's a checkbox. They're checking the box to put an older model in their campaign. But are they really looking at their product, and what do the visuals look like in their store, and what's the narrative look like? So there's more to it than just throwing a visual up and saying, okay, we've included her, now she's going to buy from us. And I've worked with brands that pull the whole campaign after one round because other sales didn't increase. Well, it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, exactly. And there is still that tokenism. I've been involved in some fabulous campaigns, and some of them have just used older models once, and then you go on the website and there's no e-commerce follow through. There's no older models on the page. They're literally just in the campaign, and then you go and look to find a product with a woman you can relate to, and they're not there. Well, it's not going to work. They're not going to get those numbers. So hopefully that is starting to change, and they're starting to realize that it's a longer term plan.
Yeah. Do you know, the bias cut in
Yes,
the UK.
I've worked
Oh,
with
you've worked with
Jacinta.
them?
Yes, I've worked with them. Yeah,
Oh,
fabulous.
great. Because
Yeah,
she's fantastic. And is doing that, right? She's
yeah,
making sure her product works. She's using authentic women and carrying it through on all the platforms.
yeah, absolutely.
So I'd say she's really the only one. There's a lot of people that are trying, but the brands that are really doing a better job are those small niche brands that are being started by the 40 plus woman,
Yeah.
and understand the power of following through on all platforms.
And I know you do a lot of consulting with brands as well, and you have a lot of conversations with these brands to open doors. How did you find that as an outsider getting into the industry? How reciprocal were they to have these conversations, or did you have to knock on a lot of doors?
I've sent a lot of DMs to Instagram, gone on websites, and it's been a slow process. And but I think it's good the way that I've gone about it, because I've gained so much information from what are the challenges, why are they not willing to put dollars behind the campaigns. We had some interesting campaigns in the beginning. A swim brand we worked with, great campaign. They hired 5 of our models. We did an Instagram all summer long. We did an event at the end. We did Instagrams every Friday to talk with the models, talk about product. The gal that was the CMO was fantastic. But again, sales didn't increase, and the brand was run by males, and they thought young skinny girls were what women wanted to see. So that was kind of where it stopped. So I think I have a lot of conversations. I've talked to a lot of big brands, and it's kind of this, I call it a slow grind. They come back, they check in, I see that they're looking at things. And so I think it's the next frontier, as we talked about briefly in inclusion. And it's funny because every single one of us ages, so it's the one that should be approached first and foremost.
Yes.
But it's the last.
It does feel like the last, doesn't it? I think it really does feel like there's been lots of progress in the plus size arena, and they've been more inclusive in sizes. I don't know what it's like in America compared to the US, but compared to England, but it's definitely, we've made big waves in that area, but then there's ageism still hanging around and not really shifting.
Yeah. I like to say with Celebrate the Gray models, you can check box your gender, your age, your race, and your size inclusion with one model. So you might not have to use 3 models. You might have to only use 1, so I can save you money.
But what do you think about the whole influencer side of things? Because I think during lockdown, it really has opened up a lot of doors for lots of women that have felt that freedom to express themselves on social media. So I think that's been an amazing opportunity. Have you seen an increase in brands wanting to use older influencers as opposed to models?
Yes. And I think the cost that's associated with it is much more attractive and much more direct to the consumer than a print campaign. So that is definitely the direction. Sales, it's hard to increase sales dramatically on an influencer campaign, but you build awareness, and then you, like you said, then you follow it through to make sure your website and all your platforms match what you're saying on Instagram. But yes, it's much more desirable by brands for an influencer. And those models that people are looking at, I'm sure you see this because you have a good following, you're more marketable. I mean, you're more attractive to a brand because you can then use your social media to talk about the campaign and extend the reach of the campaign.
Yeah, and I think it does open up the conversation as well. You can have a more direct conversation with like-minded women that are following you for that reason. So it's a good opportunity it's a good starting point for brands, I think, to test the water and to see what kind of response they're going to get.
And it's much more authentic. Many of the women that are part of Celebrate the Gray have huge followings, and they are those women are very engaged with the influencer. And, we're very careful of who we work with. We don't just work with any brand. We vet every brand and make sure that they understand who the 50 plus woman is. And I, do a lot of consulting on that side to make sure that there's authenticity to what they're doing. And we talk about what the product is, the brand, the influencer tries the product and makes sure that she really would use the product. It's not going to be a situation where she's never tried the product and she's out there promoting it. So that's super important to me.
And what big wins have you had so far? Have you had moments where you thought, absolutely, this is it. I am on the right direction. I know that this is working now. What have been some of those moments?
Well, we did early on, we did a campaign for H&M with Iris. And the model that was hired, and it's one of these just beautiful stories too. The thing I love about it, I got a call from this woman in Florida. She said, we're shooting a campaign, couldn't name the brand and couldn't name the celebrity, but as she was explaining it, I figured out, and I said, is it Iris? I don't know if you know who Iris is.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I love her. Yeah, and her collection sold out within days, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And so it wasn't a model, and again, they used all young models within the campaign, yes. But the model that was used from us was her stand-in. Right. So she did everything behind the scenes to make sure everything was blocked. She was on set with Iris. And the beauty of this whole thing was this model was from Portland, but she had grown up in New York. One of her idols was Bill Cunningham, which was a columnist for the New York Times that used to do all the social, and Iris. And she said when she was young, she used to on Saturdays go and try to find where Bill Cunningham was and where Iris was. So it was a bucket list item for her to meet Iris. And we were able to get her booked for this campaign. And she flew out to New York and was 2 days doing this. And it was all very hush hush, and we couldn't tell anybody. And then we couldn't really talk about it much after, because they didn't want people to know that there had been a stand-in and it wasn't really Iris in a lot of the positions. Yeah. But that was early on, and it was super exciting.
Yeah. To get a big brand like that, to even look at, to know who you are, it just shows you that you're on their radar. And even though conversations might not have come into fruition for bigger projects yet, just knowing that they know who you are now and the work that you're doing is a really great place to start from, isn't it?
Yeah. And we're casting right now a very big hair brand. So hopefully we'll get that job, and that would be huge. So
fingers crossed. I'm keeping them crossed for you, Stephanie. And the models that come to you, are they women that have modeled all their life, or they're new to modeling?
Both. Right. I have women that are part of other agencies. So I have a women sign a non-exclusive agreement so that they can work for a variety of agencies. And then I have women that reach out that just feel so powerful about their aging and want other women to feel the same thing, and they feel great about how they look and want to add this in to what they're doing, or they're returning to modeling because they modeled when they were young. So I really have everything.
Would you model yourself? Have you done some modeling?
No. No, but I did some with the swim campaign. I was part of that campaign. Yeah. So I get featured with the Celebrate the Gray, but I think I have a powerful aging story. I'm still running. I run with my daughter who's 22. I don't think there's anything I can't do if I try, but I have my mom is a super powerful role model for me. So I'm lucky. A lot of women don't have that.
Yeah, and I think by doing the work that you're doing and the work that I'm doing, sharing these stories of amazing women, helpfully will give other women role models that don't actually have them in their lives on a day-to-day basis. They can see them and they can hear their stories, which is definitely inspiring and motivating, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think too, so often we hear the news picks up those big celebrities or those big names. And so I always like to say to people, look, I had no experience in opening an agency. I had a marketing background, but I just asked for help, and I took classes, and I went to small business classes and figured out how to do it. And I'm still learning. That's what I love about it too.
Yeah, that's it. So you're on a journey, aren't you? And you're learning and growing as you go along. And where will it lead to? What are your ambitions for Celebrate the Grey? Have you got big ambitions, or are you just going with the flow?
No, I definitely have big ambitions. It's funny that you asked, because I just had a long conversation with a good friend of mine that's a career coach. And so I'm taking Celebrate the Gray to the next level, and figuring out how to really monetize more and how to build more programming. And but it's a learning, again, it's a learning, but I feel like I have a really good base. We have an amazing collective of women. We have great services. I have great services that I offer. But then it circles back to monetizing yourself and monetizing, and it's hard for women to put a price on their value. So I'm learning that part of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about knowing your worth, isn't it? And you have got so much to offer, so much wisdom, so much experience, and that has to have a value, and you have to be able to honor that. I think it's really important. Yeah. How can people find out about Celebrate the Gray? Where can they come and find you?
So I am Celebrate the Gray, and Gray with an A. It's the American spelling, and Gray, not the UK spelling, or the European, is with an E. Instagram, that's my website, and I'm on LinkedIn. And if there's anybody out there that's interested in modeling, we have a few gals in the UK. It's a different process that we're trying to figure out if that's viable for people. But part of the thing we talked about social media is that there's so much opportunity on social media that you really can be anywhere and get opportunities. So if anybody's interested, Gray or Going Gray, or an influencer with 1,000 followers or more, to reach out to me. Or if there's brands out there that really want to understand the 50+ woman, who she is, where she is, how do I reach her, I'd love to chat with them.
Yes.
Yeah, talk to me. I also have a really deep resource of platforms and podcasts and photographers and creative agencies to help those brands that need direction.
I love the work you're doing. My last question that I ask all my guests, Stephanie, because I recently did my own poll of 200 women and asked them, all over 40, how comfortable they were accepting compliments. And I think it came out to...
what was the response? I'd like to know.
It was, I shall tell you. It was that, 8% of them said they found it cringingly uncomfortable.
How many?
8% said they...
8%.
Okay. Only 27% said that they were absolutely fine with it and actually enjoyed a compliment. And the rest were split between mildly uncomfortable and batting it off and not enjoying it at all. So if you were to pay yourself a compliment, what would it be?
I would say that I'm super proud of building something meaningful and important.
Absolutely. Well done, you. I love what you're doing. I love what you've built, and I love your motivation for it, because it's empowering so many different women that are involved in Celebrate the Grey, but also that are watching it as well. It's a twofold thing. So keep doing what you're doing. It's fabulous.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm so excited to be introduced to you and have this connection and know more about you. And I know we need to have another conversation just about the work you're doing, and I want to hear more about what your experience have been like. So we'll have to schedule that too.
Definitely. Let's stay in touch. We've got a lot more to talk about. Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you today. Thank you. So many takeaway points from that conversation with Stephanie today. And what I really loved about it, right at the beginning, was sharing her vulnerability of having an idea but not knowing where to start, and how overwhelming that felt. And for so many, that could be a real hurdle to get past, and a real barrier that actually stops them from even trying. And like Stephanie did, she didn't know where to start, but she started by taking that first step of doing something really simple, like writing the blog post. And then it grew, and her confidence grew, and people's trust was built by the work that she was doing. She was consistent, and then she developed that passion, and it grew into something much bigger. And look what she's achieved since. When I first started this podcast in 2018, I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never done anything like this before, certainly not the technical side of things. And I'm very fortunate now that I've got Adam on board that's making a big difference to the audio and sound quality. But I hope that you can see a difference between where I started in 2018 to now. And that's all part of the journey, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect when you start. And I think that can be something that really puts women off. So don't let that fear of not knowing, and just make a mark in the sand and go for it, and start small and see where it ends up, because you just don't know what direction it will lead you to. So I really enjoyed listening to how it started and developed, and look what she's achieving. I think it's amazing that Celebrate the Grey is supporting and getting women seen that are over 50, that are grey haired, that are older, that are enjoying the aging process, that are out there bold and beautiful, and we need to see those in the fashion industry. Because I know for a fact from our own midlife body confidence survey, where we interviewed 200 women, 70% of them still don't feel represented on the high street. So brands do still need to have this conversation. We do still need to get them on board, and women like Stephanie are doing amazing things in the States to change that narrative. So love what she's doing, and don't forget you can go and look her up on social media and also on her website, Celebrate the Grey, and that's grey with an A, not an E. And I will be back in a fortnight. If you are listening to this podcast and you're really enjoying them, hopefully you have subscribed. If you haven't, go and do it now. After you've listened to this, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, and then you won't miss any of the episodes. But if you are enjoying it, I would really love you to get on board and support me by buying me a coffee. I've set up an app, but I'll share the link in the show notes. And it's just your way of being able to, you don't have to pay a subscription for this podcast. You can listen to it for free. But if occasionally you would like to buy me a coffee in support of that, for the price per coffee, you are supporting this project, because I'm not earning an income from this. This is a real passion project. I love hearing all these stories and sharing these women's stories with you, but obviously any appreciation will be hugely appreciated. So I will share a link for the buy a coffee in the show notes. But I will be back in a fortnight, and in the meantime, keep being fabulous.